Thank you, Ted, for the introduction. As you can see, I am a trans woman. Usually, when I go for any talk, I would always prefer to speak in Urdu. But today, I would speak in English, and as someone said, that this is the language of elite. And I will speak fluently because I want to change the perception that our society has that trans persons are uneducated or illiterate. I'm really happy and honored that today Ted has invited me, and I'm really grateful to all of you who have come to listen to my story. And it makes me feel accepted and respected. Having said that, I'm just wondering that today I'm standing here because I am seen as someone who is successful. But what about those of my community members who you see outside on the road begging or dancing in weddings? Would they get the same level of respect and acceptance? Let's be honest with each other. How many of you would be comfortable in being associated with a trans person as a friend or as a colleague or as a family member? Can I see hands going up? Quite a few. So whenever I'm invited on such distinguished platforms, I get the respect and acceptance. But when I go back in my normal life, I still face discrimination. Although today we are privileged enough and fortunate enough to be living in a time where in Pakistan we have transgender law and our government is taking several initiatives to promote trans rights and equality. And I am among those few lucky trans persons who got the opportunity to work with the government and to represent it at the UN. I made world history by becoming world's first trans person who was part of any government delegation at the UN in CEDAW committee. But the biggest challenge that still I face is the challenge of family acceptance and family support. I would like to elaborate the importance of family support with a story. Once upon a time, there was a prince, and the prince had the desire to play with the moon. So the prince shared his dream with his parents, the king and the queen, and they made an announcement to the nation that they want somebody to come forward and help their prince to fulfill his desire. Days passed, but nobody showed up. But one day, an old woman appeared, and she offered her help to fulfill the desire of the prince. So what she did was that she put the bucket of water under the moon, and the reflection of the moon appeared in the bucket. And that is how the prince saw the moon and got to play with it. The moral of the story is that the prince was able to fulfill his desire because his parents were supportive and they created an enabling environment for their child. This means that some of us are privileged enough that we get the support of our families in fulfilling our dreams and our desires. But some people do not get those opportunities and they have to create their own opportunities, especially transgender persons. Because I represent the Orthodox ethnic transgender Pakistani community, and we are the people who are asked to leave the homes at a very young age. So what do? We create our own opportunities. We create solutions to our problems. And we learn to survive despite of all the hatred, rejection, violence, and discrimination. So now I'll tell you about my story. And this is something which is very close to my heart. And I was recalling my entire journey while driving here. My story is a story of loss and love. I put loss first because first I lost the support of my family, my loved ones, my friends. And then I gained the love and honor that I have today. But things were never like this. As a child, I never thought that I am different or abnormal, but the people around me made me think otherwise. As a child, I could not fit into the boxes of gender binary which society has created. I was assigned male at the time of birth, and I was expected to be a boy, act like a boy, talk like a boy. But deep down in my heart, I always knew that I am a girl. I want to live like a girl. And that was the time when I felt alone because I had no friend to relate with. I couldn't relate to their interests. I was raised in Oman, which is an Arab country, and unfortunately, we do not get to see a visible trans community in those Arab countries. So that made me feel more lonelier. But at the age of 15, we shifted back to Pakistan. And that was the time when I started interacting with the other members of the Pakistani community. I still remember the day when I first met Babli Malik, who is a renowned trans activist. And I told her that my biggest fear was that I will end up being alone. And I will never find a friend in my life whom I could relate with. She looked at me and said, "Darling, you are not alone. I'm like you. And there are many of us who do not succumb to the norm." So for me, that was a party time because I started interacting with people like me. I used to hang around with them. They're the members of the Pakistani community. But during that time, I realized and I saw that my community, they are poor, they are uneducated, they are underprivileged, and they live a very vulnerable and risky life. So that day I decided that I will live differently because I did not want to beg on the road or indulge myself into prostitution. So that day I decided that I will create opportunities for myself and for my community. While I was growing up, I learned this fact that if I want to get respect in society, I need to have a very strong career and I need to have status and stature. That is why I continued studying despite of all the bullying and harassment that I faced in the education institutions. Initially, I was not comfortable in accepting myself as a trans person or as a Pakistani person because of the stigma and discrimination. And the biggest fear I had was to lose my parents and the family support. I did not want to lose. Who would want to lose, the support of your loved ones? Nobody asks why the cakes are sweet or the babies are cute, but everybody is curious about our bodies and they raise questions about our identities. But gradually, I started accepting myself because I realized that whatever my gender is, I shouldn't be ashamed of it and I should be proud of it. And that was the time in my life where I became vocal about my trans identity in my family and relatives. So that is when all the drama happens. I will share one story to make you realize that how it feels to be a trans person in a family who is educated, who is privileged. I come from a very privileged background, unlike my other transgender community members. So we have faced a different kind of family pressure because we need to protect the family image and the family honor. So a few years back, my mama passed away. And at that time, I had two very close friends. They were transgender and they were somewhat visible transgender persons. So they came all the way from Faisalabad to attend my mamu's funeral. And my entire khandan, they freaked out. That wow, what these trans persons are doing here. So my cousin came to me and he said, I will quote exactly what he told me at that time. He said that मेरा बाप मर गया है और तुमने इन हिजड़ों को बुलाया हुआ है. And at that time I looked at him and said कि अगर ये हिजड़े हैं तो मैं क्या हूँ? And then he went on and said कि तुमको क्या जरूरत पड़ी है कि तुम सबको बताते फिर कि तुम एक खुश रहो, एक ऐब है, इसे छुपा के रखो. That touched my heart. And I realized at that time that why this is an ऐब. मेरा जेंडर जो भी है वो ऐब नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि उसका इंतखाब मैंने खुद नहीं किया. For me, my gender is something which I am blessed with. This is the beautiful gift of nature, and I should cherish it. So that made me, accept myself with dignity and grace. But then the family drama continued. My relatives, they used to come to my home, and they used to tell my father, okay, जायदा हमने देखा आपका बेटा जो है खुशबू के साथ फिर रहा था. आप सोचिए कि उस टाइम मेरे फादर के ऊपर क्या बीती होगी. And then some relatives, they used to come and mentally torture my mother and say कि तुम एक अच्छी माँ नहीं हो क्योंकि तुमने अपने बेटे की अच्छी तरबियत नहीं की और इसका जिंदगी में कुछ नहीं बन पाएगा. So then finally there came a point in my life where my parents asked me to leave the house because they were not able to take the pressure which they were getting from their relatives. That day made me an activist, and I started raising voice for myself and for my transgender community. The family things makes me emotional. During my studies in university and in school and college also, I was always mocked because of my gender. There were times when I used to feel hurt and I used to cry myself to sleep. But I always told myself that I will not give up. I will continue my studies. And I was a brilliant student. I completed my MS with 3.7 CGPA despite of all the bullying and harassment. When I completed my education, I started applying for jobs, and I clearly mentioned on my resume that I am a trans person. So in 2017, I started teaching in Qajar University, and I became Pakistan's first trans lecturer. That was the moment in my life where I felt important and I felt respected. I still remember that my news went viral on social media, and I freaked out because I was really concerned what people would write because I wasn't expecting good things. But to my surprise, I received a lot of respect and love from the Pakistani population. Then in 2019, I started working with the Federal Ministry of Human Rights as a UN expert consultant. And here I would like to share a very funny experience. So when I joined the ministry and the employees saw me coming to work, so mostly employees, they were curious and they had their eyes rolling. And I remember some of them used to say, "Okay, ab khusre bhi kaam karenge ministry mein." And most of the employees at the ministry thought that I would be here because of some sifarish or reference. Because there is always a question mark on our capabilities and our skills. People till date look down upon us. Our talent, our hard work is always questioned. But when they saw me working, and when the ministry employees saw me speaking in English, which is the language of the elite, that was the time when they realized कि okay, ये मैडम है और ये एक अच्छी पोजीशन पे काम कर रही हैं, and that is when I started getting the respect which I deserved unconditionally. So from then onwards, I continued working for human rights, for women's rights, for equality and dignity. I never knew that I will go to the UN and make world history. I never knew that I will become famous. But I always knew one thing, that I am not going to give up, no matter what. As a child, I learned this fact that I will always focus on solutions. And so I kept doing what made me happy. I was passionate and determined, and that is why I'm standing here in front of you today. So, my message to the youth regarding the opportunities would be that we all have challenges and hurdles in our lives. But we have to have belief in ourselves and should try to look at the bright side of the picture. Today, I am a proud woman with a trans experience. But if I look back at my childhood, it wasn't a pleasant story. As you might have an idea by now, that our childhood is a difficult one. And this reminds me of a poem which was beautifully narrated by Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi in one of her interviews. ये दौलत भी ले लो, ये शोहरत भी ले लो, भले छीन लो मुझसे मेरी जवानी, मगर मुझको लौटा दो बचपन का सावन, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी, वो बुढ़िया जिसे लोग कहते थे नानी, नानी की बातों में परियों का डेरा। हमारे बचपन में परियों का डेरा नहीं था। मेरा बचपन मुझसे तब छीन लिया गया जब मैं एक बच्चा ही थी। So today, I end my speech with this hope that the next generation of trans community would be able to celebrate their childhood and their capabilities will not be judged on the basis of what lies between their legs. Thank you.